In this video, we will work together on worksheet number 7. As we said in the previous videos, that comparative advantage is a very important economic concept for us to understand how people or nations can benefit from trade, or why we live in these times of globalization. Okay, but before we start talking about this worksheet, I would suggest you or urge you to pause the video and try this worksheet on your own. Okay. I have to admit that this worksheet is challenging. Okay. So you may or may not be able to figure out all of these answers before checking out the video. But I still think it's helpful or valuable to give yourself a moment to think about these. Okay. On this worksheet, you can actually find 3 questions, but all of them are actually the same example. Okay, I just break them down into 3 different parts, and you'll also find multiple tables you need to fill out. So this way we can go step by step and eventually show you the gains from trade. Okay. Also, after you check out this video, you would find 2 more examples on the problem set. Okay? I believe it's questions number 2 and number 3 on the last few pages of the problem set. Okay? And so here, let's start with these. Okay, we're assuming that there are 2 countries, England and Portugal, and the numbers in the matrix represent the number of units of labor required to produce 1 unit of each good. So here, 2 economies, England and Portugal, and 2 products or 2 goods, corn and sweater. Okay. Now, here, for example, 15 means England needs to spend 15 units of labor in producing 1 unit of corn. Okay, and here 30, another example, means Portugal would spend 30 units of labor producing 1 sweater. Okay. So here, part A, which country has the absolute advantage in which good? Okay? So based upon our definition, we said the absolute advantage means you can produce a certain unit of goods or service with the fewer units of input or resources, right? Now, when we compare between the 2 countries in the corn production, we find that England spends 5 fewer units of labor. All right, so England has an absolute advantage in corn production. Okay, and when we look at the sweater production, we find that England spends or uses 25 fewer units of labor. So it has the absolute advantage in sweater production too. In other words, if we put them together, England, in this case, England has absolute advantage in both corn and sweater production. Okay, so it's pretty much like the second example I gave you in the previous video. Okay. Oftentimes people get confused, if one country has an absolute advantage in both goods, should they still trade with each other? Okay? Or put it differently, England probably is desperately willing to trade or export. Okay, what about Portugal? Do you believe Portuguese are willing to trade with England? Okay, so this is what we need to figure out in this example. Okay, so that's part A. Part B, please fill in the blank in the following two tables. Table 1, how many units of each good the two countries can produce if each of them has 60 units of labor? Now here, to proceed with our mathematics or our numerical analysis, we have to give you the size of these two economies. Okay? To simplify our analysis, we arbitrarily give you this number 60. You can definitely change this number. You said I want to do 100, 120, 180. Then you can basically create your own examples. Okay, I would actually suggest you doing that after you finish checking out this video. Okay, you come back and manipulate these numbers, and you can create a brand new example for yourself. Oftentimes, you ask me, like, where can I find more exercises, more practices? My answer is, go and create your own examples. Okay. You go to the problem set, go to the worksheets, and especially with these numerical examples, you manipulate the numbers and you can create your own. Okay, that's actually the way I use to make quiz. So if you're doing that, I think it will be very helpful. Okay, all right. So here we're assuming that both England and Portugal have 60 units of labor. So in terms of the size, they are exactly the same. Okay, as I said, in reality, it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, you could say England is bigger than Portugal, or the other way around. Okay, that's fine. But here, we just stay as simple as possible. Okay, because this is not going to change our conclusion anyway. All right, now here let's figure out with 60 units of labor, how many units of corn England can produce. Okay, so here we should say 60. Let's see, 60 divided by 15. Remember, England, by assumption, has 60 units of labor, and to produce each corn, it has to spend 15 units of labor. Right? Go back to the question. That's what we learned from the question. So here, the answer is 4. Okay? Let me put the unit here. Let's say 4 corn. So C stands for corn. 4 corns. Okay? You may not find it necessary to keep the unit here in this table, but later in table 2 and the remaining part of this worksheet, if we keep these units, it will help you get or stay on the right track or get the right answer. Okay. All right. For Portugal, we said that it has 60 units of labor as well, right? But to produce each corn, it spends 20 units of labor. So it can produce 3 corns by spend every unit of labor in corn production. Okay. All right. And for sweater production, similarly, suppose England spends all 60 units of labor producing a sweater, and for each sweater it spends 5 units of labor, so it can produce 12 units or 12 sweaters. Now let's put S here. S stands for sweater. Okay. Portugal, 60 units of labor divided by 30 units of labor per sweater, so it produces 2 sweaters here. All right. So that's the first table. Okay, and the second table, we're trying to figure out the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of corn or sweater. Okay, so we're looking at, to be able to produce 1 corn, how many units of sweaters England has to give up. Okay. Now here, if you go back to table 1, you would be able to find that, to be able to produce 4 corms, England has to give up 12 sweaters, right? Because remember, it has only 60 units of labor. So to produce 4 corms, that means it already used up its labor. So it has to give up these 12 units of sweater production. Okay. Now here we're trying to find the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of corn. So what we will do is totally England gives up 12 units of sweater, right? But it can produce 4 corms, so we need to divide it by 4 to be able to find the opportunity cost per corm, which will be 3 sweaters. Okay, so to be able to produce 1 corm, England potentially gives up the production of 3 sweaters. Okay, all right. If we look at the sweaters, we're assuming that in this case, England spends every unit of labor producing sweaters. So potentially it gives up 4 units or 4 corms, right? But it gains 12 sweaters. So eventually the opportunity cost per unit or per sweater would be 1/3 sweater. Okay, 1/3 sweaters. All right, and for Portugal, we can do the same thing. Okay, so here to be able to produce 3 corms, it has to use up its 60 units of labor. That means Portugal potentially lose 2 sweaters. Okay, so let's put it here, 2 sweaters, but divided by 3 corms. Oops, sorry. So the opportunity cost is 2/3 sweaters. Okay, to produce 1 corm, Portugal has to give up 2/3 sweaters. All right, and to produce sweaters, it has to give up, let's see, 3 corms, right? But it gives 2 sweaters, so divided by 2 to find the opportunity cost per sweater, which is 3/2 corm. Okay, I'm sorry, here it should be corm. Sorry, it's a typo. All right. Again, on the problem set, I think on page 7, you would find question number 2 is will give you another example of how to calculate the opportunity cost. Okay, make sure you feel comfortable with this because everything else in this example or worksheet is built upon this table 2. Okay, this is very important. This is actually similar to what we did back in chapter 2 when we do that PPF. You remember when we move along the PPF, we said, from A to B, what has been gained, what has been gave up. So that's how we calculate the opportunity cost per unit, right? And we could also go the other way from B to A, and what you need to do is to flip the ratio, and the answer was just a reciprocal of the previous answer, right? So you find the same thing here, okay, in table 2. Now the opportunity cost in England for each corm is 3 sweaters, but the opportunity cost in England for each sweater is 1/3 corms. So it's just the reciprocal, okay? Because when you look at the calculation of the ratios, we flip it, okay? We flip it and for both countries to get their opportunity cost. Okay. Now, in the next video, we're gonna check out how to do the table 3 and show the games from trade.